All right, so welcome everybody to Saratoga Whiskey Club tasting number 148. We keep rolling right along here. It's been a really busy year so far, and we have a lot more really great tastings coming up in the next few weeks. And actually just all the way through this first 6 months are pretty crazy. But Holly and I, a few weeks ago, kind of were brainstorming what we should do tasting wise. And we actually have one of our members here tonight, one of our original members here tonight, who a while back said, why don't we have a tasting where, you know, everybody throw in, you know, $50 or whatever, and we just buy a bunch of bottles off of the shelf and just taste them for what they are. And so that's kind of what this is tonight. I know we didn't get to vote what we were going to taste tonight, but Holly and I voted, and we decided to create a new holiday in the actual.
First annual.
This is our first annual Independence Day, which celebrates independent bottlings. Doesn't have to necessarily be from Scotland. Maybe we'll have an Independence Day that features on bottles from other countries. Or whiskey from other countries. But we're starting off our first inaugural Independence Day with Scotland. I think that makes the most sense, since it's kind of where, at least what I think, most independent bottling originated from, especially when you go back in the days with Gordon MacPhail and some of the older family bottlers. But tonight we have a really great lineup of what is it, four different independent bottlers, which is really great, so that we can kind of get a good sense of the style from each of these bottlers as well. I don't know if you remember, but we did a tasting back in 2020 with Single Cask Nation, and it was really great to kind of get a sense of what kind of barrels they're looking for. And, you know, we talked a lot about the viscosity of all of their bottlings. It's always kind of a fun process to teach yourself how each of these independent bottlers kind of approach their style. So maybe keep that in mind. We've tasted, you know, lots of Signatory before and some Murray McDavids. But the key with this is to really kind of just see if there's a way to pick out what makes Signatory or Murray McDavid or any of these things. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There is an online scorecard if anybody does feel like scoring tonight. And let's see, what else is there? If you have any questions, feel free to chime in or use the chat feature. We are going to be sharing slides. That's why the tasting is facing this group of people behind me. We have about 12 people in person for this tasting. The rest of you are online. But we want them to be able to see the slides as well. So we're facing the monitor behind us. It's a little awkward, but it is what it is. They get to see the back of my head for some of this. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Why don't you go ahead and start with the first? We have Holly's here. She's going to poke her head in here too. So I'm not by myself. We both have a microphone, so hopefully you can hear us okay.
Very professional tonight.
If you do have a problem hearing us, please chime in and let us know. And this is kind of a new setup for us, so we're going to see how it goes.
All right, you want to pull up the...
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen because we have slides on Signatory.
You all won't really be able to see it, so it's okay. It's just photos and logos. We'll be able to point at things on the shelf.
They should be able to see it.
You'll be able to
I'll be able to see it.
Where is it? Is it this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I hide that? My application. Okay. Everybody see that online? Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. So am I supposed to be talking to them, but with the microphone so they can hear?
Yeah, you can be talking to them. You can pull the microphone out if you want a little
Okay.
bit,
Let's see here.
because nobody can see you now since we're sharing the screen. So
Okay, well, I figured we're gonna talk about Signatory first, but it's actually a great opportunity, and we did not plan this, but it's basically a Diageo tasting for the first three. Did not plan that. It's some of Diageo's workhorse distilleries, but we'll move into Murray McDavid for the third one. Signatory is probably the most well known for their perfume bottles. So that's what on the slide you'll see, but you all can see some of them over here. These are your kind of claim to fame perfume bottles. Those they have three lines from Signatory. So the cask strength single cask are those perfume bottles. And then you also have this next level, which is the unchill filtered collection. All of those white labels are still single casks, unchill filtered, obviously, but they're 46% ABV. And then they have their connoisseurs line, which is 43%. And those are usually orange and yellow. So you can kind of see their range. And the founder is Andrew Symington. I heard he's quite the character as well. He bought Edradour back in the day when it was still Scotland's smallest distillery. So when you go visit Edradour and Pitlochry, you will actually see a lot of great offerings from Signatory, and that's where they do all of their bottlings as well. So he started with Signatory and then purchased Edradour, and Edradour, as we know, has expanded as well. So we thought we would show off. I think the unchill filtered collection doesn't get as much love. I know we all like cask strength, but you can find some really cool distilleries within the unchill filtered collection. So we'll start with the Dailuaine, and everything in here except for the last two is unpeated. And I know we have Kim, who's on the call, is a big Dailuaine fan as well. So this is Speyside Distillery, one of their larger distilleries. And how I remembered Dailuaine is I actually went to, none of these are open except for Jura and Caol are open to the public. So even Teaninich, which we'll get to, you can't even see it from off the side of the road.
I can't believe this guy made it.
Yeah.
It's a long drive. We got you right here, Tony.
Dedicated. You can pick up that first whiskey too.
Go
for it.
Yeah.
So Dailuaine is one of the workhorses for Diageo. So all of these you'll find in Diageo's, or the only place you'll find it as distillery releases are in the Flora and Fauna range. We don't get those here in the States. They're UK only. But that is the only opportunity. Usually it's like around a 10 or 12-year-old. That's the only chance to try some of these workhorse single malt distilleries. And workhorse is not a negative term. It's just someone, I actually think it means that it's not a higher quality malt, but a blender, whoever was the blender at the time that they were making these decisions of what goes into Johnny Walker, what goes into Dimple or Haig or Dewar's or Chivas, whatever the blend is. These malts and these distilleries were so important that they could not be released as a single malt brand. So they're actually really powerful tools. And a lot of distilleries like this, their whiskey's becoming even more expensive when it gets out into this secondary market, like independent bottlers, because they're so special and there's not much like them. So sometimes people view distilleries like these as, oh, it's just, you know, mass produced and it just is for the blends, which, okay, you could call anything mass produced in Scotland when you compare it to a craft distillery down the road in New York State. But yes, a lot of them have expanded over the years, but many of them did start in the 1800s, some in the 1960s. And Dailuaine also is, it's kind of the one that I always will remember for Diageo, because it's also their effluent plant. So attached to the distillery is where they deal with all of the waste from the distilleries too. And I actually stayed in an Airbnb my first time in Scotland. And when you're in rural northern Scotland, everyone knows everyone. And I told them what I was doing, and the guy was like, oh, my son-in-law works for Diageo. I don't know what he does, but I'll have him walk you around. And I showed up at Dailuaine, and he was basically walking me around, avoiding the cameras, and I got to go through the Diageo effluent plant and see where all of the pot ale, all of the stillage, everything that's left in the pot stills, spent grains, and it gets turned into biomass basically, or pumped out to sea. So I did get to tour the waste plant of Dailuaine, but I had never seen the distillery. They're very buttoned up. So I'd love to see what people think of this. This one in particular, and Teaninich, do have a bit of a cult following of Diageo's malts in the independent bottling world. This is 46%. The first two are 46%. And we didn't plan this either. These are all hogshead or bourbon matured, which is something that I love, so it worked out for me. But we're definitely thinking a bit of a kind of springtime vibe for a lot of these whiskeys as well. Very, very layered, still great mouthfeel, but the sherry, you're seeing what the quality of the distillate from these distilleries really is, because there's not a ton of oak influence on these. And this one, I believe, is a hogshead.
I mean, look at the color of all of the whiskeys in front of you, right? I mean, it's like.
But they're fun to sniff. The smell is so bright, which I love.
Yeah, they had a nice nose, yeah, very light.
There is like a little bit of a sulfur note I get a little bit on this one.
Might be from the barrel, depending on the type of oak. And Kim may be able to speak to it, but they do talk about quick distillations with this. So it is known to be a little bit heavier than a classic Speyside. So it's fruity, but it's kind of like that old peachy fruit, a little bit. I wouldn't go as far as funk, but it's
more on the nose. I get
a density
kind
to
of
it.
a sulfury note.
Yeah,
it reminds me, it doesn't taste like it, but it reminds me a little bit of the nose of like a Mortlock.
Yeah, I could see that. It's not worm tubs, but I could see that. And this distillery was built in 1851. So this has been around for quite some time. Has had a few fires, like a lot of old distilleries. Was in the Dewar's family, and then was just through different mergers ended up in Diageo's portfolio.
$85.99 for that one.
And we've had a few Dailuaines in the shop. I was also either they were playing a trick on me, or I was at a small whiskey bar in Inverness last year, and they told me that the Scots Gaelic way of pronouncing Dailuaine is Dailuaine. And I said that in front of someone else from Scotland, and they started laughing at me. So no one knows if it's Dailuaine or if it's who knows, lost in translation. Call it whatever you want.
I'll tell you that Pip Hills told me it was Dailuaine, like Ruinia.
Okay,
Oh.
so it's got some of that flair that I was.
She continued to keep my focus on Joey and I, and I'm just trying to get him out.
She looks different when she has her hair pulled back into versus now.
There we go.
So leave some of this one as, if you can, for the next, to compare to the next two. You want to dive into Mannochmore?
Sure. I'm going to talk about the next one, and I'm going to just read Holly's notes. How about that? Because I don't know much
Do you
about
want to
these
wait?
places.
Do you want to do Loch Lomond and Caol and Jura?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you want to do that? Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
He's just literally in your
Today was a good day.
Those are in the notes, yeah. That was for you, Charles. It was
Oh,
a good
okay.
day.
It was better than yesterday, let me tell you that.
So we'll go into Mannochmore. I love Mannochmore.
It's like that.
So good idea, like Holly mentioned, don't finish the Dailuaine if you can, and try to compare these first two, since they're both signatory.
So this is one of those 1960 distilleries, and its sister distillery, which was built, or the wave of the 1960s, I should say. It was built in 1971. Glenlawsie is its sister distillery, which we have actually had some Glenlawsie in Old Particular from Douglas Lang before. You see Mannochmore a little bit more often, like we have a Murray McDavid Mannochmore port finish, but they were built around the same time, and that 1960s, 70s era, we see a lot of distilleries that were built then, like McDuff, Glendevron, Mannochmore, Tormore. Some of these distilleries that it was really because of that Mad Men era where blends were just catapulting. I mean, you couldn't make enough blended scotch. It had really nothing to do with single malts quite yet at that point. It was all to go into the blends. And the core purpose of Mannochmore was to go into Hague, the blue bottle, which I heard, what's that soccer player's name that was part of Hague? Famous one that's married to Posh Spice.
Oh,
David Beckham.
David Beckham.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember David Beckham's name. Of course, I'm a girl from the 80s.
Never heard of it.
Everyone got Posh Spice.
Oh, wow.
He used to be work with them. That was his brand, but I guess they're no longer partnership together. But Hague and Dimple. Has anyone seen Dimple? It's kind of a South American brand. But it's like Pinch, Dimple, some of those Latin American brands. You see them around here, but I love knowing what the core of blends is. And Mannochmore is a huge part of those two. And it makes sense for Hague. If you've had Hague, it tastes like a buttery marshmallow. That's what Mannochmore is, like a buttery fruit marshmallow. Yeah, so 1971. Apparently some controversy as well. Too loud. Some controversy as well with Mannochmore. Also back then, people didn't talk about color as much of whiskey. Now we look at this and we know, although Charles and I do have to defend a lot of bottles on our shelves still to this day. Oh, it must not be good because it's so light, but caramel color was coming into play pretty heavy in this time frame too. And apparently they put out a whiskey, I think it was like Loch Dew, and it was black. And they got into quite a bit of trouble just due to how much caramel color they put into that Scotch whiskey, and it was pulled apparently you can still find it on auctions, and but it was pulled pretty quickly. So it has actually a bit of a bad reputation just because of coloring, but I really like this style. It's grassy. They talk about just this buttery kind of grass, and we'll get into more grassy notes as we go into Teaninich, but this does well with finishes. So like the port finish on this from Murray McDavid is great. It just even kind of juices it up a little bit.
So what do you guys get, like tasting notes on this second one?
Buttery butterscotch.
Butterscotch.
Fruity. It's very light and pineapple, fresh.
So
Yeah.
I think
Grassy note, the freshness.
Yeah, it's clean. It's like being outside when your laundry is like blowing in the wind. I don't do that, but I would imagine if I lived on a farm.
So where is Mannochmore?
Mannochmore is,
Do you know?
where exactly is it?
Dailuaine is in the Speyside.
Teaninich Highlands, Mannochmore's Speyside as well. It'll say on the bottle.
Oh, right.
Signatory puts it on their bottle. I believe because of the green, I believe it's Speyside. Yeah. Again, these are distilleries that you could drive around forever, even on the back roads, and there's no signage. I mean, you see a lot of distilleries throughout Scotland as you get more rural, but you don't know necessarily what distillery it is because they do not want you wandering in. That's for sure.
I love merch.
No visitor center or gift shop.
Yeah.
So in this,
We are getting to go to Tormore though.
yeah, which you can't miss off the side of the road. So that's exciting to.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's another 60s. So this has 8 stills, and as of 2013-14, they may have upped it since, but 4.5 million liters of new
Wow.
make spirit per year. So big, but actually not massive.
But that's still pretty big.
Well, Knock Dew is 2
Okay.
million. I'm sure that they've ramped that up since 2013, but there's definitely Glenfiddich is at how many stills?
Oh,
30?
well, yeah, that doesn't count.
So there's definitely larger, but it has its purpose and
It's
that's
over
where it's at.
30, I think.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
pretty massive.
32 or more,
Yeah.
yeah. I really like the Mannochmore.
Me too.
I think I like it better than the Dailuaine.
Yeah, I like it too. And usually I like the heavier quality. Both 46, yep. So they're the two Signatory unchill filtered releases.
Yeah, and the second
Both
one's
hogsheads.
92, 99 for the Mannochmore. I'll put that in the chat so people have it. It's kind of nice to start with 46.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's been interesting. When I was in Scotland in September last year, you know, you tend to gravitate towards wanting to drink cask strength, and that's kind of where you, if you're in a bar or you're looking for those special cask strength bottles. But when you visit distilleries, you're not always going to get cask strength samples. You know, they're going to give you their core, and then they're going to throw in one or two maybe special things, but it's not like 60%, 60%, you know, they're starting you with 40s typically, and then maybe they throw in one cask strength, maybe. Sometimes they don't. But we were at Ben Riach and they didn't have any cask strength until we had a couple of samples at the very end, but they were so good at 46%. I was like, wow, this is like, you forget, like, because you get into that mental, it's like a mental thing where you're,
Why did they touch it?
you know, it's like cask strength is the only thing that's going to be good. And I catch friends of mine sometimes saying that. I'm like, no, you know, come back to earth. But these are, Signatory is a good example of like some really solid mid 40%. Yeah, so I know you guys can't see Holly and me online, but you just have to pretend we're here with you on the computer staring at this table.
It's like the podcast, just our voice.
Yeah, it's a podcast. We're doing a podcast tonight. So yeah, this is really good. I love this Mannochmore. I think this might be the first Mannochmore I've ever had.
You rarely used to see them, and now I'm starting to see more of them. So there must be more.
Where have you had them before?
All Murray McDavid, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we didn't have any.
We have one right now.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
Oh,
the cask
did you taste that one?
You did.
Oh, yeah. The lower end one.
Yeah,
Oh,
the entry
okay.
one.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, the
have
port
had-
takes over.
I have had Mannochmore before.
But in its raw, this is showing true Mannochmore to its known flavor profile.
So Chad preferred the Dailuaine, which is great. So did Quaid. So it's a good mix. Kim, what was your thought? One or two?
She loves Dailuaine.
I know you like Dailuaine, but
I didn't really like either.
okay. All right.
Yeah, and I actually went back and forth to kind of see which I liked more, and I don't think I have a preference between
Okay.
them. Yeah, what they weren't for me.
All right. No problem. It's all good. All right. We'll just remove Kim from our call from here on out. It's okay though, you know. There are more tastings. I'm just kidding. All right, so we're gonna move on now
Move
to
on to
Murray McDavid.
Yep.
I'm gonna let Holly roll since she's just rolling here. You know,
So these are, you can see them here in the shop. We have an old Murray McDavid bottle. Hanging out here, which is
you might need to bring them up here to show the people online too.
and then you'll see the new releases.
Yeah, in-house.
I think it's on the deck.
No, you
Have
guys get
used the deck?
cucumbers. They don't get cucumbers.
Have you used the deck at all?
Oh, yeah, I have. Okay.
So it should be on the deck too, but this is the old Murray McDavid packaging.
I'll share.
And this is a great box to try out.
Oops. That's not the right one.
I mean, it's
It's a bunch
applicable,
of
but,
casks.
and this is the new packaging. I kind of liked the old, but it's not good for the environment, the metal tins, I'm sure, but.
Why is it doing that? Oh, everybody's getting to see my computer here. It's not.
That's all right, don't worry about it.
No, but it's there. I just gotta find it. That's it, right? Ah, there it is. All right, there's Murray McDavid. There you go.
Okay, yeah, so you guys can see it a little bit. This brand, which I think helped sell it for quite some time. I mean, I love their releases, but this was originally owned by Mark Rainier and some of his friends from Bruichladdich. So they sold it off to this kind of investment spirits company that's not very beautiful, ACO. Which there must be some, I keep meaning to Google it, there must be some relationship or investment with them in Caol. There's some sort of relationship with Caol in Chicago. Maybe someone here online knows too, but you consistently see in Murray McDavid releases Caol bourbon or rye cask finishes, which is very specific.
Have you guys
It's
had,
not normal.
have you had Caol before? Any of you guys?
It's been around, they've been around a long time. They're not big.
Chicago based.
But they've done some weird experimentations. But this, I believe, is the Caol finish, or is that Braeval that has the Caol? It'd be cool if Braeval had the Caol finish.
No, it's Teaninich.
Teaninich has the, and that's the US exclusive?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
they're both USA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Teaninich is another Diageo. And this is, they call this the exotic grassy whiskey. I don't know about exotic, but grassy for sure. I don't know that grasses can always be exotic, but they talk a lot of in tasting notes and green tea, this sort of another clean, not necessarily super fruity. And this is actually a Highland malt, so they're north of Inverness. And they are quite old. They're one of the first legal distilleries, built in 1817 by two brothers, the Munros. And there was the original Teaninich distillery, and then they wanted to expand again in the 60s and 70s and built Teaninich A. And then when things went downhill, which hopefully we're not headed to repeat our history in Scotch whiskey soon, because we've been expanding for a while. When things went downhill with Scotch whiskey in the 90s, early 2000s, they actually shut the original Teaninich distillery down, kept the second one running, and now 20 years later, as things have been ramping up, they're building Teaninich B. So we're now on our third Teaninich distillery. You got a couple folks walking in.
Hey guys,
Hi, how are you?
welcome.
Enjoy your seats.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
We're on the third one.
We were confident.
This one will probably go well with the cucumbers. I don't know if you want to try it pairing, but
The chocolate went well with the butter.
yeah, with the Mannochmore.
So one thing we used here when we do in-person tastings is sliced English cucumbers. They work really well for palate cleansing, so that's why Holly just mentioned pairing.
Just randomly,
Yes,
grass and cucumbers.
not sea cucumbers.
This one is 54.7. So we're into still single barrels, just like the Signatories. Just jumping up into cask strength for Murray McDavid. Murray McDavid also owns Colburn Distillery, which we haven't seen much from yet, but that's definitely a distillery to keep an eye on. So yeah, they're on their third distillery. They're known to have that grassy, not spice, but it's not overly fruity. And this one too, just from a technical production standpoint, they're one of only, I believe, 2 or 3 other distilleries that doesn't have a mash tun. So when they're actually milling their grains and adding water into that big vat to really work on getting those starches converted into sugars before you add the yeast to make the beer, they actually use a mash filter. I guess it's quite common in literal beer production, not whiskey production. So there is no mash tun. There's never actually been a mash on site. So it's just from a Scotch whiskey industry production technique. It's super cool in the nerdy
How does that
engineering
work?
world. It's basically a pressure
Force?
filter.
Okay.
Yeah. And not as much, it's not a big vat that you just have to dump all of the water in.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, they use a mash filter as
Heated
well.
water though, like it's
Yeah,
just
still
pressure
sort of
with
same
heated.
concept, yeah.
So this one, this Teaninich 10 years, there's 173 bottles. Like Holly mentioned, it's the Caol bourbon cask finish. They do have tasting notes on the back, which we can see if they line up to what we taste, but the nose, dry grass, honey, sweet ginger. The palate, apple pastry, vanilla, spicy malt, and the finish, long mouth coating and peppery.
Yeah, it's got some
Interesting.
pepper.
Yeah.
So it's a Highland, which
So it's 3 years in the Caol.
in the finish.
In the finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a while.
Which is a decent amount of time.
And Highlands, as we know, doesn't mean anything. I mean, none of the regions actually mean anything, but especially Highlands, it means Highlands means the rest of the country. It just didn't fit into an island or to Speyside, basically. So there's so many different styles of, think Aberfeldy to Clynelish to this Teaninich. Highlands would mean nothing if you were just saying, oh, I like Highlands. I wouldn't really know where to start with that. I need a little, maybe a brand or some more information, because it is kind of the dump all category. In a blind tasting, I'm sure if we were trying to pick regions, most people would probably just say Speyside because of the grassy light quality of it. Yeah, maybe this is one that I'll try and sneak into my next Highlands trip and see if we can find it. It's not too far off the beaten path. So that's the Diageo 3 for tonight, which Diageo is the largest drinks conglomerate in the world. They own a lot of alcohol brands and distilleries all over the world, not just in whiskey. They've been a monopoly so many times in Scotch whiskey, and they've been forced to sell off. That's how Dewar's got their 5 single malt distilleries, and they continue to just, with mergers, own too much of that country. So some people don't care for them, but when you're at the top, that's how it works. When you have the most money and can do whatever you want, that's kind of how the world works. But they have so many distilleries that we never get to try. And again, that's why we're having this Independence Day, because they're really beautiful. I would love Mannochmore to be its own brand. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people swear by these distilleries, and they do come up. So if you have another Dailuaine or Teaninich that you like, it could be a theme, and you can start looking for it in other independent bottlers as well. We like the Teaninich. It's a little different.
Yeah.
It's a little alternative.
But on the palate, it's like a ginger snap.
Okay. So yeah, some of that baking spice without any sherry influence either, which is interesting.
There's something about Murray McDavid with the way that they do these finishings that, I don't know, it's pretty great.
3 years, some blenders would call that a double maturation.
Right.
That's a long
That is a
time.
really long time.
I mean, every blender has their own way of viewing things, but Stephanie McLeod with Dewar's and the Bacardi malts said that really under a year is a finish. If it's over a year, it's a double maturation at that point. It's more than a finish.
But you don't see that term used very much.
No, you see it in bourbon,
Yeah,
like
but
double
not
oaked
in,
or,
not really in Scotch.
yeah,
You'll see double cask, maybe, but
yeah. Glen Scotia, I mean,
Right.
you don't see it a ton though,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think our knowledge of that is like Belvini Doublewood, where it's just a marriage of two different types of casks.
Right.
But when it's a single cask, it might be confusing
right.
for people, so.
That's, yeah. So that makes a lot more sense. So double cask though with Glen Scotia is the same thing. It's two casks, right?
Well, yeah, that's a small batch, it's like a
Right.
vetting,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because that's quite the volume that they produce of that. All right. That was really good. I like that one.
Well, I like the next one. Let's say, see what people think of the next one.
Anybody have any questions on the Teaninich or anything? No? You good?
Where exactly is it?
It's north of Inverness.
Oh, right.
Yeah, not too far. I don't know the town, but it looks like it's not far from Dornoch, like in that little area. If you were gonna go up to Glenmorangie, Delmore, and head to Clynelish, Belblair, head up in that direction. But I actually have not seen physically, there's not a lot of roads up there, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna go look for it next time I'm up there.
Well, since I work for Diageo, I think they're gonna let us in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
To
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Diageo doesn't recognize my efforts, but that's okay. This is recorded, by the way. All right, so we're gonna move on to our second Murray McDavid. No, you can do this.
Flips. You want me to do Braeval too? All right, we're rolling.
I don't know these distilleries, so. Anybody had Braeval before? Anybody heard of Braeval before? No?
That's why you're
Anybody
so
online
excited.
heard of Braeval? Yeah, it's okay. One person, two people. All right.
When you don't know, you know.
Just keep drinking.
Keep drinking.
Just trust us.
We'll drink.
Braeval. Oh, so we've got this one here. So Braeval, we're back to the 1960s again, another era, but now we have switched mass conglomerates. We're now with Pernod Ricard, the French. So we're out of London with Diageo, and now we're over into France with Pernod Ricard. So Pernod Ricard would be your Glenlivet, Aberlour, Strathisla, Chivas Brothers is their core blend. So still one of the big conglomerates in Scotland, but not the biggest. So Braeval was built in 1972, and this shows you, even though it's Speyside, it's actually right up there tied with Dailuaine for highest elevation distillery. So a lot of times you'll hear Dailuaine talk about how it's the tallest or has the highest elevation for a distillery. Braeval is actually right there with them. So it's in the mountains, and they first got roads in the 1960s. We're not talking that far from Elgin, that far. We're a couple hours north of, you, Johnny. I love that. The 1960s, and then 1972, the distillery was built. So they were just waiting for some transportation to get to some of these places. Some of the islands are still waiting to get some transportation. It was originally called the Braes of Glenlivet, and a lot of distilleries in this area of the Speyside region that we know now is actually the Glenlivet area. Before the distillery was a brand, they just that's how you noted that we're of high quality whiskey from this region, the Glenlivet region. And you'll see it on Cadenhead still uses that term a lot for a lot of their malts. Pregalachy Glenlivet or Altmore Glenlivet. It's been dropped, obviously, because Glenlivet does not care for that anymore. It's a little annoying. And so they weren't trying to be a brand, so I'm sure they were quick to say, you know what, we're sorry, Glenlivet. Also, you're owned by the same company, so let's just drop it. And that's when it became Braeval.
What
So,
does Bray mean?
um,
You said the Brays of Glenlivet,
I think using hill.
the hill? Okay,
Slope.
okay.
very.
Hills or
No,
slopes?
now we know exactly where to find it.
Coming from Johnny Walker
On
himself.
the side of the hill.
So it means a steep bank or hillside.
Great.
Johnny Walker, we do have a member named Johnny Walker. He crushed it. Just saying.
Yeah, you missed your whole intro Johnny Walker tasting for the first three.
This is also very light. What's the ABV on this?
This is 50.7, so we dropped down a little bit on this one.
And this one's
So
finished.
Holly, what
American.
flavors do you get off of this? This
What's
is
that?
different. What flavors do you get off of this? This is different to me.
What flavors are you guys getting on this?
The butteriness.
Yeah, apples, custard.
Apples.
Light caramel custard.
I'm definitely getting a custard.
Yeah, it's
note.
got like that that custard frosting, you know, that kind of not yogurt, but it's got this creaminess to it. Yeah.
I was thinking like dates. I was getting
Dates?
some dates.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So on the bottle itself,
Oh, yeah.
so
The
what's
finish is
interesting
a
about
little,
this is this is first fill bourbon. So this is not finished in
Ready.
anything.
Mhm.
It's weird. It says American oak cask finish, but
That
on the
means it was
back,
in a hogshead.
but in the back it says filled directly into a first fill bourbon barrel and matured for 8 years.
Maybe it was, we could ask them, but maybe it was like a bourbon where they do double oak.
Oh, okay.
It could be.
But the notes on the back here say nose, vanilla fudge, creamy tropical fruit, palate, sweet malt, orchard,
Mm.
hint of anise, finish, sponge cake, hint of
Okay.
caramel.
Yeah, bread, sponge cake, that kind of not grainy, but yeah, this is a really interesting whiskey.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. It's very rare to find this distillery, even in independent bottlers. So that's why we were quick to grab this one as well.
I mean, sometimes when you see these names, you know, you can be afraid of them, and it makes sense. They're just so unheard of, and they're in a way a tough sell, right? When you have a bottle like this on your shelf, I mean, only certain people know or have heard of Braeval. And unless you have an open bottle or a sample for people to try, if you're taking a little bit of a gamble, right? It's kind of hard sometimes with these independent bottlers.
I mean, it's the fun and it's the challenge. Although it's kind of the
I mean, what's fun about it for sure is trying something new and seeing if it's in your wheelhouse,
Mhm.
right? But we know how that goes too. That can go the wrong way.
well, that was like when we got that Del Munich from Claxton's. It was
Right.
like one of the first Del Munichs to come out,
Right,
and it
right.
was a risk
But it was
because
so
it was
good.
young. But yeah, we wanted to be some of the only people that
Yeah.
had any Del Munich.
Yeah.
So
This is really great. I'm
it's
enjoying this
different.
one. Yeah.
It's fruity with a side hook.
With all of these, what I kind of feel with like independent bottling sometimes, we all have our we're all used to kind of maybe our go-tos, right? Which are typically distilleries that we see more often, right? They're not these random obscure independent bottlings necessarily. But what I struggle with a little bit on a level like this is like, when would I pull a bottle of this out to taste? Like, what is the moment that I would like pull this Braeval off of my shelf and be like, all right, this is a Braeval night. Like, what is calling me to, you know what I'm saying though? Like,
I know, but
it's all about
But when you get into this world, I don't think that's how we
But I
drink
mean,
whiskey
but it,
anymore.
well, no, we don't for sure,
Yeah.
because we're trying stuff all the
Mhm.
time and we like to try new things. But from a consumer standpoint, if you're gonna buy all of these different expressions, right? Like
Yeah.
what, unless you're doing something like we're doing tonight, where you're trying multiple things together, like when is it a Braeval night? I guess that's my question, like.
We could say that about
Uh,
any of them. Like, what is it, a Jura night?
No, but I
When
mean, you
is it
think
a-
Glen you think Glen Farkless, you think, you know,
Yeah.
some of the standard
Well,
brands.
this would be when you feel like it's a Glenfiddich night and you want to be way cooler. Or
Alright.
like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to help Braeval here.
No, I think it's really cool to have because it's something you can pull out and be like, oh, have you ever
Well,
heard
you're
of
definitely
this?
gonna show up all your friends.
Well,
You
no
have a
question about it,
Braeval.
because nobody's
Yeah.
gonna have ever heard of
And
it.
one thing that I find interesting about Murray McDavid is it's although the ownership
Chad, Tuesday, Wednesday.
is a Braeval night.
It's a Braeval.
Be brave.
Solar eclipses. I love it.
Yeah, the equinox.
Hey, we created a holiday for today, so why not have a Braeval day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We just have to figure out what day of the year that is, but.
One thing about Murray McDavid that I've noticed, I don't know if it's a continuous theme from the Bruichladdich ownership days, but a lot of finishes. Even if they're not wine, or they're always doing finishes, and I find that their whiskeys tend to always be on the sweeter, heavier side.
Uh-huh.
Not heavy like in funky, just we notice a lot of like custard, and they tend to be a lot of finishes and on the sweeter side. So something to keep in mind if there's something new from Murray McDavid and you want something sweeter, they tend to blend in that way. Where Signatory is known, I mean, rarely finishes. It's very in its raw form, classic to a T, 1980s Scotch whiskey.
Quite a bit first fill.
Yeah,
too.
hogsheads, like, don't mess with it, it's not broken kind of mentality.
Right.
Where Murray McDavid is definitely playing around a bit more with finishes
Well, I
and
mean,
skews sweeter.
Think about it.
I
Have
find.
you ever had an Edgerdour that's finished?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah, all the Bordeaux's and the.
Those are, oh, okay. I just shot myself in the foot.
But not Signatory.
No, I know, but I'm thinking about like the fully matured Edgerdours
They're
that aren't,
sherry. Yeah,
you know, I mean, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of finishing going on there.
yeah. I mean, outside of some
It's kind of
Steoshas
their thing,
Yeah.
right? It's just
and right to the point.
right to the
No
point.
frills, great Scotch whiskey.
right.
Yeah.
Whereas Murray McDavid, I've never seen one that's not finished.
They're a little more modern,
Yeah.
I guess you would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're trying to be more mainstream too with their lower
Fast
entry
craft.
point.
Yeah. So that's on the slide too, but they just, which I think is awesome because sometimes, you know, to get into the independent bottling world, you don't have $100 every time. And a lot of these can hover around there. But Murray McDavid just launched their cask craft. So non-age statement, all finishes. So Madeira, port, there were 5 in
Bourbon.
the range. And I think it's a
Been thick.
great way for people to spend $50 and feel like they're dipping their toe a little bit into independent bottling and can understand it a little bit better. Gordon and MacPhail does a good job with that too, with their discovery range. But they were the only ones that really did that for a while. Otherwise, you had to get in, if you wanted to be sub $70, $60, you were getting in blended malts, which is great. Those are great, but you know, being an independent bottler and a blended malt, you have 2 major hurdles to overcome now, minus 1.
So Kim and Tom are getting some funk on this one as
It's
well.
bready. I mean, there's like you said, there's definitely a malt grain component.
Yeah.
But it's different. I really find this one very interesting.
So for me, interesting, and
It's
I know Kim used interesting in the comments and Holly's been saying it multiple times now. I stay away from that word.
To me, it's not negative.
To me, it's like
That's
you
what
don't
you
know
say
what
to
to
a
s-
sales
but
rep
you
when
don't
you
know
don't
what
know what to say.
you don't know what to say, right? You call it interesting. So I don't. It's to me, it's I don't know.
Interesting.
It's complex.
No, that's a compliment.
I'm just messing here. All right.
You feel good about Jura?
Who liked Teaninich more than Braeval, or vice versa?
Braeval?
Braeval. Okay. Braeval.
Yeah.
Wow. So everybody's pretty much on the Braeval bandwagon
No ginger
now.
snaps.
So
But still. Yeah.
All right.
no, I think we're just gonna roll.
You know what to do. Okay.
It's like a podcast. I mean,
All right,
we're just
all right.
talking whiskey here.
No, so we have insulation there.
All right,
You
we'll
know,
go into the
independent
labels.
bottling is more your thing than it's my thing. So
You're just saying that so you don't have to do any of the bottles.
no, it's all good.
All right.
People
Douglas
are
Lang.
tired of me talking all the time. So
Douglas Lang. We're gonna jump into our next bottler.
oh, let me pull that screen up.
Douglas Lang has a lot of releases and they can sometimes be difficult to keep up with. The ones we had up till now are very organized bottlers. Douglas Lang, Hunter Lang, the family split in a family dispute. So there's Hunter Lang and Douglas Lang. Two different independent bottlers. Hunter Lang is even more confusing with all of their releases. Yeah, they're a tough one. They just keep coming out with new brands. But Hunter Lang are the ones that own Ardnahoe on Isla, the new distillery. Douglas Lang owns Strathern Distillery, and you're seeing a lot of like Murray McDavid with Colburn. He did this much earlier on than these other ones, but Signatory with Edradour, Elixir Spirits, which is the single malts of Scotland, elements of Isla, Port Askeg, still a bottling company. They purchased Tormore. So you're seeing a lot of Adelphi with Ardnamurchan. So you're seeing a lot of independent bottlers buy distilleries in the past, or start distilleries in the past 10 years. And that's really just to have a bigger seat at the table, to be able to trade their spirit and with other Gordon and MacPhail, right? We know that they have Ben Roma, and they just built a new distillery called Cairn Distillery. So it helps you when you're dealing with cask brokers and other distilleries to swap spirit and to be able to trade whiskey and also, you know, independent bottling is hard. It's in a very volatile market. When the Scotch whiskey industry is booming, which it still is right now, these distilleries are not just handing out casks and barrels. They're going to hold on to it and see maybe what comes of it. Maybe we can make some money. When there's a downturn in Scotch whiskey, specifically single malt Scotch and blends, these distilleries are quick to sell off as many casks as they possibly can to independent bottlers and brokers, which can be the middle tier of this world. So it's a lot of these ebbs and flows, and we've heard a lot of bottlers talk about how distilleries and brands and big companies either really love them or find them extremely annoying. You know, they want them there when they need to offload whiskey that they can't sell, but then when times are good, they want them to go away. They don't want to sell to them anymore. So that's a tough business model, to just be at the will of, you know, of these big companies. So, you know, starting your own brand, you're putting your effort into your own brand and your own liquid now, and not someone else's liquid. So you're seeing that happen a lot, but Strathern is a very small distillery that I have not tasted. But Douglas Lang, actually the daughter just took over. I believe her name's Kara. So it's a family affair, and they really are known for their blended malts. They have we have the Rock Island right now, but the Galdrins, it's all the regional malts. So the Galdrins is from Campbelltown. Rock Island are all a bunch of island malts. Big Pete is all Isla malts. Scallywag, Timoris Beastie, and the Epicurean. Those are actually all really, really great blended malts, and that's probably where they make their money. But gee, Charles and I know that's a hard sell. to not be able, people just like to know the distillery. I don't know what the psychology is behind it. We don't care in bourbon, right? Like, whatever, we don't care where it's from. You know, let's give it a shot if it's high in alcohol. Like, it's so interesting, the psychology of blended malts. MGP, love it, don't care, you know, wherever it's from. Not everyone, but it's interesting between countries how you have different psychology of what's okay and what's comfortable. But I know that that's what their kind of claim to fame is and where their big brands are, that they do have this old particular range that I've always really enjoyed, and they have really old age statements and some older releases, but they always kind of fall in this 10 to 15 year range too, and I think they're usually pretty solid pricing. There goes our plow again. So we're focusing on Jura, so we're gonna hop to the islands. We have an Othrosk and a Jura right now. And to be honest, I really prefer Jura outside of it being a brand. I don't know if any of you are Jura fans. I don't mind the Jura distillery released whiskey, but I find that I much more enjoy it in independent bottlers that matured in hogsheads and let it taste like a coastal malt. The distillery does release their own whiskey, which is the first one tonight. So they have their own brand. Jura is actually the sister distillery to Dalmore. So owned by White and Mackay. And I am not against White and Mackay at all. I like Dalmore and Jura. I love the cigar malt from Dalmore. They are known to chill filter their whiskeys and color them. So it's just for a different consumer. It's not a negative thing. I order their whiskeys at bars, but I find that the weight of how they choose to mature things, you know, Dalmore is known for heavy sherry. Jura can be that way too. This is an island. This is a coastal distillery, and I like the bright brininess that you can get off of Jura if it's left to be what it naturally is. This is an unpeated Jura. They do make peated malts as well, which are great. I tend to like the unpeated though. So Jura is this little island that you can see from lots of distilleries and overlooks when you're on Isla. So it's right next to Isla. There's about 200 people that live on Jura right now. And they're known for their deer. I believe that's what Jura means, Deer Island. And it's a pretty cool place. A little haunted, just like how I feel Orkney is haunted as well. There's more people on Orkney, so you're probably safer, but sometimes there's a bit of an aura, but that's part of it, right? I mean, it's pretty remote. You can get to it very quickly on a little boat between Isla and Jura, or between the two islands. A lot of illicit distilling happened here. It happened all over Scotland, but a lot of illegal distillation. There was this core distillery that had lots of different names. Eventually actually shut down though, because it was too remote. Think about getting grains to this island and getting whiskey off the island. And it's even Isla, you know, a bigger island that has a little bit more infrastructure for whiskey production. It's a real pain to get things any goods in and off these islands. And so they shut down the distillery, but some true locals saw the population decline. I mean, you were commuting to Isla for work if you wanted to live on Jura. So they decided to revive the distillery, and that's where we have Jura. And then White and Mackay came in. So it is walkable, so you can take the ferry, hop right off the ferry, walk to the distillery. There's a cute little hotel, have a drink. It's a quick day trip. It does look like a cool place to go. That's actually where George Orwell was living when he wrote
You can walk
1984.
from the ferry?
Yeah.
Because I was looking the other day and you have to rent a car or hire a
I don't
car.
think I took a taxi.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, maybe my memory serves me wrong, but we'll look into that. I don't remember getting a taxi.
Because I was trying to figure that out for our trip and
We'll look together.
you couldn't walk.
We'll look again.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, this is in its raw form. I believe it's hogshead.
Yeah, refill hogshead.
Yep.
This is one of 345 bottles. This is 48.4% ABV. Again, no coloring, no chill filtration. This is Jura, so that's a unique thing. There are some interesting notes on this. Actually, you guys have already been talking about some things. This is pretty funny. It is unpeated, but we have a new term now, decaf peat. Decaf peat. That's great. I love it. I think it's perfect. But yeah, so here on the nose, these are the bottle notes. On the nose, polished wood. And I definitely get like some kind of almost cardboardy, woody notes on the nose. Weird.
That
Yeah,
usually means
I don't
that it's
know.
off, that it's gone off.
I got a little cardboard initially, but polished wood mingles with vanilla, toasted oak, and meringue. I
I
don't,
get like a frosted graham cracker, not cardboard.
well, it's going away, but originally that's what I was getting.
I'm getting either a licorice or an anise.
Palate,
Palate.
thick and rich, clotted cream, porridge, and the gentlest hint of spice. Finish long with a touch of sea spray and a mineral quality balanced by brown sugar. So 13 years old. This is our oldest whiskey of the night, which makes you realize that age doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like it's still got that brine on the mid to late finish.
Did you guys hear about the £1 million that was satellite in Jura? Did you hear that story?
That was what in
£1
Jura?
million, like currency was satellite in Jura.
£1 million was burned in Jura.
So there was like, I was just looking this up because I remember this story from years ago. So it was a band who managed to make a lot of money, and for an art gig, they took £1 million, like in pound notes, and they took it on a hut in Jura and set the whole thing up.
Oh my God. So a band,
That island's
a
weird.
band made a lot of money in Scotland, and for an art exhibit, they took £1 million and burned it all in a hut on Jura.
Donated or something, anything but burning it.
That's, yeah, okay, whatever.
If you look that up,
Jura does get a bad rap, Chad, that's for sure. And I think a big part of that is, like Holly was mentioning, their core line is, it's nothing to jump up and down about. And even their special releases from time to time aren't all that great. It's truly their independent bottlings that are much better. So
Which they have nothing to do with. I
we
mean,
had the James Eady Jura 10-year. That's
yeah, that was
fantastic.
good too.
You know, so some of these independent bottlings are really, really good. This one's pretty solid, I have to say. I
These
still
are
get a
all
little
like
funkiness. I
48.
get like a nuttiness on the nose.
48.4. I think that's their thing is like always around 48%. This is 48.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll actually get on Jura. I was trying to figure it out, and that might be too hard, but we have a lot of other really great things though. So anybody have any thoughts on this one? Good, bad? Yeah.
It's just a little coastal splash before we get into peated.
So Emily says it might be a little bitter. I could see how maybe you can get that.
It does feel like it's in a bit of a mood. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bound up. I would be curious what some water. It could flatten it.
It's
but
very different from the James Eady
Yeah.
Jura.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
I definitely get more of that kind of.
Which
graham
Jura is the
cracker.
best to buy for non-Jura drinkers?
From a core standpoint?
Do you want peated or unpeated? Typically, the peated releases start with a P, so like prophecy, or so that's how you determine if it's peated or unpeated. I'd have to see their range
Yeah, I've just
again.
never drank a lot of it.
Yeah, it is in a cool bottle. It has these cool kind of symbols on them. There's a lot of releases.
Or we just recommend the Independence.
No, I mean, like I said, some people really
Yeah, they're like.
swear for Jura, but I would say that White and Mackay, the owners, definitely put more attention to Delmore. I mean, that is their
Right.
big brand, and then Jura, I feel like the marketing team decide something in a day and there's a new brand launch. So it can be hard to keep up with what they're doing over there, which I think is too bad because there's such a story in that island. I mean, George Orwell wrote 1984 there. It's, you know, it's so rural and you can actually get to it. They could do a lot with that story. So I don't know why they're not doing more with it.
What
but-
was our, what was the notes that we had on the James Eady one? Kim is asking, how is that
It's
different?
definitely brighter,
Yeah,
definitely brighter, less cookie, you know, it was very bright salinity.
coastal too,
Yeah.
yeah, much more coastal, I remember that, for sure.
And it was higher in ABV as well.
Yeah.
They might have some more on that. We've bought a lot in.
Yeah, that was 60.5%.
I think we're the only ones that
quite
carry
the.
James Eady too.
All right, so we're gonna move on to Claxton's.
All right.
Let me
Claxton's.
pull up the Claxton slide.
This is a little
here.
bit of a one-off. I threw this one in because I love, I'm gonna mispronounce this too, but Croftengea or Croftengea, whatever you want to call it. This is a Loch Lomond malt, and I love Highland peated malts. I think they're underrated. You can usually get them for a great price. They're a sweeter peat. Isla gets all the fun and all the excitement for peated releases, but I think Highland peated releases are great too. So if you're familiar with Loch Lomond Distillery, they're north of Glasgow, massive distillery site. And Charles and I were just talking about it today. I think by appointment, but you can pretty easily go visit.
Yeah.
All different types of still setups, Lomond stills, which are these flat top kind of hybrid column pot stills. They produce medium peat, heavily peated malt, unpeated, triple distilled, single grain. I mean, they're like a one-stop shop for every type of Scotch whiskey that you could make. And this is, sometimes you'll see a special name given to a distillery's release when it gets into independent bottlers. So Croftengea is not the name of the distillery, it's Loch Lomond, but it's also not even the name that Loch Lomond gives to their peated whiskey. We were going back and forth. I think it's changed. I always knew the heavily peated whiskey from Loch Lomond to be Inchmoen, which they do release their own whiskey. Inchmuiren, I always thought was the triple distilled whiskey, but Charles, maybe they've made a triple distilled medium peat Inchmuiren. Either way, it's confusing. Don't worry about it. This is the heavily peated double distilled single malt from Loch Lomond. And Exclusive Malts used to release some of their stuff. You'll see it here and there. And this is one that I always grab. I don't know. This one to me is peated marshmallows.
Yeah, this is kind of heavy peat. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah,
say this is
it's
real
just-
peat.
It's a great kind of everyday peat smoke. And this is 50%. This Claxton's was in the United States for a little while, left because we're a real pain in the butt as a market. And then we allowed 700 ml bottles back in just a couple years ago. And we actually talked and spoke with Tom, one of the directors for Claxton's. We got a little bit too, we were only a year old as a shop, and they approached us, and I think, which is a compliment, thought we were a little bit bigger than we were, and asked if we wanted to import them. And I was like, of course, let's do it. I was like, yeah, I don't think that I'm gonna be able to import a pallet of your whiskey just for the shop. And so we actually connected him with Raj Sabharwal, who, so we handed it over. Someday we will get there. He was very nice about it. He was like, oh, okay, just kind of passed him off to someone else. And then we brought his whiskey in anyways, but
Raj knew him beforehand as
yeah.
well.
So it was just like, hey, they're still looking for an
Right.
importer again. But Raj imports all of the Blackadder whiskeys and Eagle Red, and so they just came back last year, which is great. They they have these big square bottles, which they did not release in the United States. Those are still just Europe, but those are usually pretty highly sought after. Those are the kind of like the perfume bottles of Signatory. Those are the cask strength single cask releases from Claxton's.
Those are here down on this slide.
Yeah, you'll see those in Europe. And then this is their newer range, all at 50% ABV, which I think is a good sweet spot to start and keep price down. And they have access to a lot of different distilleries that you don't normally see in independent bottlings. Like a Ben Rioch they came out with, and a Dailuaine. Some of these distilleries that are quite small, and I'm not sure what those connections are. They also release whiskey quite young, which doesn't bother me, but obviously is a tough
So
sell.
4 years. This is
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they're a fairly newer bottler, a few decades, not the oldest by any means. They're in the lowlands, and they have an estate that you can actually go and visit them, and a tasting room and all that. But yeah, so this is that heavily peated Loch Lomond. So when you see Croftengea, that's their nod to Loch
So
Lomond.
what are some of the other independent releases that use different names?
Putting me on the spot, we've definitely had some.
Warhead?
Wardhead is, but see, this is a little bit different because this is just a name that they asked them to use. That's a name for when they teaspooned.
Oh,
The
okay.
whiskey.
Well, there are some though. Glenmorangie doesn't use their name.
Oh yeah, what was that name? For the Single Cast Nation, Glenmorangie that came out.
I don't remember.
Someone knows it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you're not
You'll
allowed
see
to
that with
use.
Macallan
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. Sometimes you cannot use names of distilleries. They just don't want you to, and that comes into play more of the relationship with the bottler. Like Gordon McPhail is one of the original Signatory as well. So you'll see Signatory release Glenlivet. Most newer bottlers like Douglas Langer, and we're still talking they're 40, 50 years old, but they're not going to get permission to use that distillery name. It's a trust issue. But a lot of distilleries, and you can see why, if they're their own brand, well, if you put out a really garbage single cask and it has Jura written all over it, they're going to look at us and be like, well, I don't like Jura. So there is some risk in there, but it also is an opportunity to celebrate your whiskey across another stage or another platform. So sometimes you can't use the name. To be honest, I don't know why Loch Lomond, no one would really care if we used Inchmoen, but I think they just wanted to keep it organized and say, okay, you know, if you use our whiskey, please use this name, and no problem. No one knew the first name anyway, so whatever, we'll just use the one you gave us. But sometimes you'll see
I think it's actually kind of cool
I think so
that
too.
it's a different name, because
It's
it's
the
actually
underground
giving you
world
another
of
brand
this.
in a way,
Yeah.
right? I mean, without it being another brand.
And it's this underground side world of Scotch whiskey
Yeah.
that makes you feel like you get to try something that is not in the norm.
You almost need a translator of like secret whiskey.
Yeah.
Croftengea equals. You need an app. We need an app. Who wants to make an app? Come on.
There's some, it's
Independent bottling app.
a little ashy for a Highland. I think if it had more time in oak, it would be sweeter. But maybe that's why they bottled it at this age too, to keep some of that ash. Because for peat, what would have died in the Highlands, it's going to be shrubs and trees, and you don't have a coastal peat bog. It's landlocked. So when you get into more island peats, you get more of that medicinal burnt rubber quality, where the Highland whiskeys tend to be a little bit softer, floral, sweet peat. Yeah, this definitely has a bit of an ash to it.
There's a lot of distilleries that own their own independent bottling or vice versa. Is that?
Yes, but most actually started as bottlers and then saw the value of owning their own distillery. So a lot of them started out as bottlers and then decided to build or buy distilleries. So a lot of them do now have their own. I don't think that Claxton's has their own distillery at this point. I'm sure they're looking into it. Probably a local
Thanks, Kim.
distillery.
Good to see you.
Like a distillery with a certain independent bottler.
But that's really in the last 10 years. Otherwise, they really kind of kept separate. And the independent bottlers do stem a little bit historically of like how we got blended scotch, where grocers and families would pick out their own casks or make their own custom blends, and they kind of became a brand within themselves within their region. And became known for the quality of what they were choosing. And it's not unlike how blended scotch, obviously blended scotch can be done in mass volume, and this is more niche, but yeah, a lot of times it's family companies that kind of are in the cask brokerage area. Yeah, this is a nice little fun everyday peated sipper. Yeah, not gonna hit you over the head with peat, but gives you some of that that smoke.
You said it was described as heavy peat though?
It is, yeah. I mean, it is their heavier peat. Yeah, and I believe it's 50 parts per million is the medium
So-
was 25.
With peat, though, wouldn't 4 years, how would that affect the peat like flavor though? Like, I mean,
Usually
typically,
you lose parts per million with time,
right.
so it would still be quite high. At
So some
4.
people said this was a little sharp, which I can see from age and maybe even the ppm.
That might just be oak.
That could be
time and oak.
too,
I
yeah.
mean, it's barely legal. 3 years is the minimum to be a Scotch whiskey. So,
Yeah.
just from the nose, I don't know, but it's not your sweet peat, and I'm assuming that that's probably why they bottled it so young, so that you could see this punchier Highland
And it's
peat,
probably a good thing that it was at 50%
and not cask strength,
versus
yeah,
60,
whatever it was.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would have been probably pretty hot.
too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting when you think about it. Being able to proof it down to 50% will allow you to bottle younger whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, they could have bottled it at cask strength, but I'm sure it was fiery.
Right.
Yeah. And this is a hot, they
But
don't say it.
that
this-
helps Claxton's though, you know. in a
Yeah, you
way,
get more
right?
bottles. And this is not a single.
Well, no, not
cask.
just from a more bottle standpoint, but from a flavor standpoint.
Mhm.
You can't necessarily bottle a 4 year at cask strength and have it be as good as this.
I'm sure it
That's
depends
kind
on
of
the
what I'm
barrels. Yeah, but this
getting
isn't
at.
a single barrel, right?
No,
It's
I don't
I
know.
think that they are.
All right, well, let's move on. Let's move on to our last whiskey. We're going back to Murray McDavid
All right,
on our last,
back to the sweet.
back to the sweet. Now, when I was pouring this one earlier, the nose was really pungent.
All right, Caol, which a lot of us are quite familiar with in Independent Bottlings. It's one of the staples of Isla in this world, sometimes the only one that you can get. I love Caol. I know some people hate on it. It is the sister distillery to Lagavulin. It's always been in the shadow of cool big sister Lagavulin. It is back to Diageo. They do release their own whiskey, but again, kind of like Jura, I don't think anyone really cares about their own, the Caol brand from Diageo. They make unpeated and peated whiskey there as well. The unpeated is fantastic. So if you do get a hold
That's
of
the 15-year.
Stitchell Reserve and the 15-year, yeah. But they're known for heavy peat. So this is really a classic Isla, heavy peat, medicinal malt. But then this has been finished in a cognac cask from Murray McDavid.
Oh, wow, I'm getting some really interesting back palate notes.
Yeah, it doesn't finish like a typical.
Yeah, the finish is something different, right? So this one, just so you all know, is a 9-year Kalila. There's 537 bottles of this, so quite a large barrel of cognac.
The grape like pops back up at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one is, let's see here. They don't actually say how long it's been. Oh yeah, 3 years in a cognac cask.
That's a lot.
3 years. That's a long time out of 9.
You can feel it kind of blanketing the peat. I mean, the peat is trying to get out, but you can feel the cognac kind of laying
Yeah.
on top of it.
But not in a bad way.
No, but it's a cool fight a little bit on the mid to late finish.
So the tasting notes on this one, the nose, coastal, crisp apple, charred oak, the palate, beach, bonfire, oily citrus, ginger, the finish, leathery, lingering salted caramel.
It's a little denser to me than that. But I
It's
like the
fun.
fight.
It's very different. It's very, very different. You're not going to find a Kalila like this.
And
very
a lot
often.
of sweet finishes with heavy peat usually do very well.
Yeah,
Sweet with the smoke.
yeah. But typically it will be a red fruit sweet
Yeah.
that does really well. Cognac doesn't
Armagnac
always
and
work.
cognac, you get, especially Armagnac, you get a little, because they can be sweet, but they aren't always
Yeah.
sweet, especially Armagnac, but we don't know the cognac.
What's the ABV on this one?
This one is 54.2%. So we're back up to the 50s, mid 50s. I like it.
Yeah, I like the nose.
This would go well with a cigar, maybe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not like overly powerful, but it's got that nice kind of medium finish that's
Definitely sweet. I mean, it's got that caramel
Yeah.
sweetness on the nose.
I kind of knew when I poured this one out that I was gonna like it, just based on the
Yeah.
smell.
I knew when you got to the peated. We have we always have a nice mix of Coelas. Well, we have the red wine, Ingle Red Coela. DS Taman has their red wine Coela. Yeah, we always have a mixed bag of, it's a staple in the independent.
Well, it's
bottling world.
interesting because you get so many barrels of Kalila available
Mm.
for independent bottlers. I mean, it's probably the most
It's like really only
common.
Isla malt. Think of the other Isla distilleries, who's gonna sell to you?
But I mean, to think of all of the barrels though, like it's probably up there in the most common independent bottlings.
Yeah, well, because just their volume.
What
and-
what other ones would there be that
But
would compete
think
with
of
it?
the other ones are massive brands.
Yeah.
So Coela, Diageo, they act like they care about Coela, but I don't think that they do. I mean,
Well,
they do
they
for
do
Johnny
for
Walker
Johnny
Black
Walker,
and
yeah.
Double Black,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So this is the backbone malt, peated malt for Johnny Walker Black and Double Black. I mean, this is the driving force for those two malts. Where Lagavulin, all of that now goes to distillery releases. So your Lagavulin 16, your Lore, your
No, that's Lefroy.
is that Lefroy? Oh, what's
The
left
8.
with in the distillers edition?
No, there's the 8. Well, then they do release the Offerman. They do the 12-year
that's right,
cash strength.
Offerman. But there's still not a ton to
No.
go with Lagavulin.
Very nice, yeah. Yeah, I got the two expressions so far.
Very different from the first 3.
Yes, Laura is amazing for sure. All right, guys. What do you guys think?
Great.
Good first
Who's our
independence.
favorite bottler?
Yeah.
Signatory, probably?
Signatory, nice.
Always
The
had-
classic
Mannochmore was
Scotch
your
bottler.
thing?
I really like that one.
Wow, that's awesome.
Sweet stuff.
Yeah.
It's just right there.
We have a Mannochmore. Favorite was Braeval. Okay.
Nice.
If you guys could put in the chat what your favorites were, that would be great.
Yeah, other favorites?
So wait, let's go around real quick. Nick, what do you got?
Murray McDavid.
With the Kalila?
Yeah.
The favorite of the night, I'm gonna go with the Jura.
Okay, Kalila, Jura,
Kalila for me.
Jura.
Jura. Wow.
I do Jura as well.
Jura. Wow.
I'll go back.
But that was Old Particular. That wasn't
I know, I
Signatory.
changed my mind when I forgot. how to do that.
Okay. What do we got?
I'll go back.
Mannochmore, all right.
This last one.
Okay, Kalila. Vinny,
Kalila.
Kalila,
Teaninich.
Teaninich, nice.
The Kalila.
Kalila, all right.
Braeval for me.
Braeval, wow, we got a mix.
Kalila.
Kalila, all right.
Nice.
So Kalila was definitely heavy. Let's take a look online. We've got, all right, we have Braeval, Kalila, Braeval, Mannochmore and Braeval, Kalila, Croftengea
Croft by a hair.
by a hair over Kalila.
Jura.
Croftengea,
And Signatory.
Quaid is for Jura, BJ for Jura. Wow, nice.
I'm telling you, Jura is, I shouldn't say it on record, but it's best in
Diane and
bottlers.
Dave,
Just Diane and
Signatory.
bottlers.
Braeval and Kalila, there we go. Nice.
The Jura 12 in her-
Well, I'll tell you what, from a whiskey club standpoint,
So random.
from a shop standpoint, I mean, how often are you able to try 7
This
independent
was awesome.
bottlings?
This
That
is
are all in
happening
that $100,
every year.
they're all in
Mark
that
your
$100 range. They're not like crazy, you know, $200. These aren't like crazy perfume bottles, you know, just your regular. Good.
And our goal in the shop, we want this category to not be so daunting. I mean, it's not for people that are here tonight. You obviously kind of understood what it is, but we love explaining to people that this is, yeah, it takes a little extra reading, right? You got to read, okay, this is the bottler, this is the distillery. There's some more information to navigate on the label, but it's so fun. I mean, there's the flavors that we just don't see in the distillery releases.
Yeah.
It's just wild. It just shows you all of Scotland and what is really out there. So we just don't want it to be intimidating. And that's the point, is just to
Can
try.
you imagine if there were American distilleries that were just used in blends and we never got to taste them?
We would start
There'd be riots.
pitchforks.
There'd be riots
Let
in the
us drink
street.
it, yeah.
No, so it is fun. It is fun to be able to try these bottlings. So yeah. All right, for the online folk, I'm gonna wrap it up with that. I know you couldn't see me. I'm right here.
Oh, I didn't even realize.
I'm gonna stop the recording so it doesn't go too long. Oh, that's Holly's hand, so she's waving goodbye. But hope you enjoyed tonight. This was our first Independence Day. We're gonna
February
celebrate
15th every year.
February 15th every year. Is that
Isn't that today?
yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
It's a
guess
holiday.
so. It won't be on a
15th.
Wednesday
You can't change
or a
a holiday.
Thursday.
Don't do it on Valentine's Day.
Call it a Valentine's Day recovery.
It'll be the day after
You
Valentine's
can't
Day
change the day.
every year.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
There we go. All right, guys. I'm gonna sign off. Hope you enjoyed tonight. I'll see you soon. Ciao.
Good
Night.
night.